are people racists, and what's going on with our country? Where does racism come from anyway? How prevalent is it? How do we stop it? I want to look at this from a neuroscientific approach, but first let me give an example. The most racist person I ever met was when I was doing door-to-door sales in the southeastern U.S. back in the 90s. And a wealthy businessman invited me into his house. We sat there making small talk, and he asked if I'd noticed that there were no African Americans in the county that I was in. And he said, it's because we don't let them in. And then he told me a story about how he and his buddies had found some African American families having a picnic near the borders of the county. You know, the kids were playing in a pond, and everybody was having a good time at the picnic. And he said they shot their cars full of holes, shot out their windows, shot their tires flat, and we wanted to send a message, he said. And I mean, the most shocking thing to me about this was the man didn't think of himself as evil. He thought of himself as an upstanding citizen who's I don't know what was going on in his head, helping to protect his community or something. But picture being one of the families at the picnic. You're just there having fun with your friends and family, and kids are playing in the water. Next thing you know, bullets are flying, and that was 1994, not all that long ago. And it's so racism is a thing. It's hard to solve a problem without identifying what the root cause is. So how did we get to where we are today? We've got minority oppression, rioting, protests. We've got horrified, outraged, angry citizens for a variety of reasons. Okay, so a big part of the problem is that civilization has changed much more quickly than our brain has. I'll explain what I mean. So picture this. 10,000 years ago, it's 10,000 BC, and you're part of a small hunting and gathering tribe. One night, one of your children walks into camp and says, "I saw a strange man today." A big hairy man with a long beard, or a tall pale man painted blue, or a man riding a strange animal. So what's your reaction? Most likely you hide the young and the weak, and you and your buddies grab your weapons and you go trying to figure out who this person is. There's no welcoming committee. There's no cookies. I mean, in 10,000 BC, somebody who didn't look like you or who wasn't from where you were from was a very likely a threat. What happened to people who weren't suspicious of strangers? Well, they were removed from the gene pool. So if you weren't removed from the gene pool, and you weren't, that's kind of hardwired into you. Now, Pocahontas, if you believe the Disney version, tried to persuade her tribe that, why can't we all just get along, accept the strangers? Pocahontas, how'd that work out for you? How about the folks who, when they saw the Huns on the horizon, sent out tea and cookies to greet them? They didn't really do that, but you're working in your village and a long ship full of Danes pulls up. You either get out of there, you run and hide, or you exit the gene pool. Strangers are not a good thing. That's 10,000 years ago. And unfortunately, that's still the brain that we have. We perceive strangers as a threat, and protecting our own group is of the highest interest. And now you might say, well, that's not true. I'm not a racist. I moved past that, and you're right. But kind of. So what do I mean by kind of? Well, before I get into it, have you ever done something that wasn't your normal behavior? Maybe you gave into peer pressure and did something.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Cheers.
No, it's not cheers.
Cheers.
No, I'm scared.
Let's go.
Dumb. YouTube's full of that. Jump off a house onto a cactus, whatever. Or maybe you had a mama bear meltdown. Or you screamed at the ref at a T-ball game, or you flipped out, or you devoured 4 tubs of Ben and Jerry's. Then you come back to your senses and wonder, how did this happen? Why did you seemingly become another person? So to understand this, we need to talk about what's called the Triune Brain model, because understanding this is at the core of understanding our current situation. So your brain in the Triune model consists of 3 parts. The first part to evolve we'll call the lizard brain, down to the brainstem. It handles survival. Its job is to keep you safe, to keep you fed, to make sure that you stay alive, to make you want to have babies. Basically, all the things that lizards worry about. And this part of the brain, it also handles fight or flight. The next part to evolve is the mammal brain, more in the middle. It handles emotion, feeling, memories, belonging. It handles group, herd, or pack behavior and dynamics. It handles social hierarchy. Think of junior high. So its job historically was it was also a survival thing, but survival in a different way. It was survival by increasing your importance within the tribe. The higher you're standing in the tribe, the more likely you were to have mates, to have access to food, etc. And so this part of your brain handled pack behavior, and at the very least, it kept you from being banished from the tribe. People who were bad at this, well, they got removed from the gene pool. So if you're alive today, tribal belonging is hardwired into your brain. I'll come back to that in a minute. So the final part of your brain is the human brain, and that handles language, cognitive thought, imagination, symbolism, reasoning, sense of self. This is where Einstein lives, for example. That voice in your head where you're noodling through problems, that's the part of the brain we're talking about. So, and would like to think that part of the brain is the part of the brain who we really are, but that's not how your head's wired. So the way it's wired is lizard brain has top priority, followed by mammal brain, and then human brain is last in the pecking order. So, for example, your thinking cognitive human brain says, I'm going to go on a diet. Your lizard brain will tolerate that for a little while until it says, my job is to keep us from starving. We're starving. And that's when you put away the 4 tubs of Ben and Jerry's. And then it hands the reins back to your cognitive brain, and which says, what have I just done? How did I do that? Or if somebody threatens you or your family, lizard brain takes over and you turn into a different person until the problem is resolved. Your friends dare you to do something stupid. Cognitive brain says, no way. But your mammal brain says, come on, do it and you're cool. It'll help your standing in the tribe. So, yeah, I mean, different parts of your brain actually, it's a battle to have the cognitive part of your brain stay in charge, and sometimes it can't, doesn't, won't. The fact is, it's only in charge when the other 2 let it be in charge. But it's more than that. Not only does it have first priority when it comes to action, it also governs the entrance of information into your head. Your cognitive brain doesn't become aware of information until it's been approved and processed by the lower brains. It's a weird condition. It's called hysterical blindness, and that's where somebody goes blind without their eye being damaged. Usually it happens after they've seen a horrific accident or something traumatic. They're blind. They can't see anything. How many fingers? I can't see a thing. But then the doctor throws a ball at them and they swat it away, or they catch it. How do they do that without being able to see it? Well, their eye still works. It's still sending visual information. Problem is, it only makes it to the lizard brain. That's why they're able to swat the ball away or so on. But the lizard brain has decided seeing is not a good thing. Remember what happened the last time you saw something that put you into a state of shock? We're not letting that happen again. Okay, they can use hypnotherapy and other stuff to get through it, but hysterical blindness illustrates the point that cognitive thought doesn't reach you, or information doesn't reach cognitive thought until it's passed through the other two filters. So what if somebody found a way to manipulate that? Well, turns out that somebody did. Because if they could control what information gets into your head. And what if you could do that with a jury? So two authors wrote a book, and it was on how to appeal to the lizard part of the brain. They weren't even subtle about it. The name of the book is Reptile. That's what they named the book. And it caused a stir in the legal community. They wrote it in 2009. A few years later, it was a big thing. It was only for prosecuting attorneys in tort law, people who were trying to go after settlements. And the essence of the book is that if you make it a matter of safety, if you make your case a matter of safety and you're on the good side of safety, a lot more detail on that, but then you've won. Your lizard brain says, that guy's on the side of safety. It doesn't matter what the other side says. It's not going to make it up to the cognitive brain. They've won if they can establish that. And so then the defense attorneys were writing, trying to figure out, so how do we overcome this and how do we get around it? Because it had a massive impact. So yeah, that part of the brain can be manipulated. Anyway, your mammal brain can play a similar trick. So if information causes you to lose favor with your tribe, so for example, if you receive information that doesn't agree with your tribe's tenets, your cognitive brain doesn't get the information. It gets blocked. Think of people in religious communities. You wonder, how can you be so pig-headed and not see the defects that we see in your religion? Or thinking of flat earthers, for example, it's like everyone else is thinking, how do you not see this? They take them and they show them physical evidence, and it just doesn't make it. And that's why, is because they belong to this tribe now. They belong to this group. They identify with it, and so that information can't be passed along. That's also why Republicans can't think of anything positive about Hillary. It's not that they can't think of it. It's their brains never recognized anything positive about Hillary. Democrats haven't ever recognized anything positive about Trump. If there was anything positive, it got knocked out at the mammalian level. If you want to see this in practice, how many of you have blocked somebody on social media because they were saying something that made you mad or offended you or something like that? Well, that's what we're talking about. So you weed out the stuff, and so you're left with only information that agrees with what you talk about, or that aligns with your way of thinking. Can people manipulate this? Oh yeah. Why do you think they use celebrities to do advertisements? I mean, we evolved to want our brains evolved to align with the desires of the alphas, and that's just what happens. So when we see George Clooney using this particular toothpaste, it doesn't happen. Cognitively, nothing happens, but if at the mammalian level, it says, that's the toothpaste you want. That's what the alpha's using. Okay, back to racism. Oh, well, okay, fine. One more thing. One other big difference. In 10,000 BC, if you saw someone who had been mauled by a lion, it meant there was a lion nearby and your tribe was in danger, so you went into high alert. You warned everybody that you could. Tribes that weren't good at going into high alert and getting the message out to everybody, they were removed from the gene pool. So if you're alive today, you're good at that. So then technology changed, but our brains didn't. So now if you see somebody being mauled by a lion in West Virginia, are you in danger? Well, if you live in West Virginia, yes. No, but if you live anywhere else, you're not. But your brain is nonetheless horrified by it. and you still go into high alert. Your brain isn't, you still have the 10,000-year-old brain that thinks you're still living in a small tribe wandering with a small group. And so when something horrific happens anywhere and you become aware of it, you assume that it applies to your tribe, and you go and you panic, and you notify anyone. So a man in Minneapolis is slowly, brutally, horrifically killed by a police officer, and it's captured on video. So what happens? Several things. People who identify as being part of this man's group go into high alert. They forward the video to everybody they can. They're shocked. They're outraged. They act as if a lion had just killed a member of their family in the tribe. They respond in full-blown fight or flight mode. In this case, it's fight. They're out. They're burning buildings. They're destroying things. It's as if they had been invaded. They're in full-blown war mode. And now on the other side, although this didn't happen in this case, the police often will circle the wagons and defend their own. Why? Well, because the men in blue, man, that's a tight brotherhood. That's a tribe. And the brains of individual tribe members won't let them take a position or process information that's going to jeopardize their standing with the group. That's just how human brains are wired. Now, one encouraging thing about this is the number of non-minorities who were outraged by the murder. The number of non-minorities who sounded the alarm, who forwarded the video, and who notified everybody. I honestly don't know if they could have reacted any more strongly if it had been like a friend of theirs from up the road who had been killed, or even a family member. They were fully and completely distraught. So why is this encouraging? Well, because it means that subconsciously they think of themselves as being a member of the same tribe or family as George Floyd, the man who was killed. And that's not a choice. That's not a cognitive choice. It's an instinct. So if you're part of the minority community, that might be a sign of positive progress, that a lot of people really do identify as being part of the same community as you. But there's also other people, a lot of people, who didn't react that way. Well, why not? Well, they perceive themselves as, not belonging to the same tribe as the rioters and the looters. They say those aren't my people. Is that wrong? Is that bad? Maybe. But if you flip the tables and if there's a video showing a white person getting killed by a minority officer, would minorities have the same reaction that they did with George Floyd? Or would they see it as payback, settling the score? If you fall into the latter category, it's settling the score, then guess what? Then there's work to be done with you as well. You don't feel like you belong to the same tribe as the others. And I'm not saying it's your fault. Maybe you want to belong, but just feel excluded. But in any case, it's evidence of more work that needs to be done. So now, one more thing, slightly different topic. After these police incidents, not this one in particular, but after police incidents in general, how often do you hear people saying, hey, just do what the officer says and you'll be fine? That's like when your scuba instructor tells you, hey, when you're 30 feet underwater and you see a 20-foot great white shark coming towards you, don't panic. Yeah. So tell me that your heart rate doesn't speed up a little bit when you see a police car, or speed up a little more when it pulls you over. I mean, fight or flight is hardwired, folks. I mean, and neither option, fight or flight, is good. When I was a teenager, I found out that my instinctive reaction is flight. I still have no clue how I cleared that barbed wire fence. But anyway, wagging your finger at someone who panicked when the cops stepped in, that's just a complete failure to understand human nature. Now, having said that, we need to consider the men in blue. They have no idea when their next potentially deadly encounter will happen. Given the intense situations that they're forced to handle. I'm amazed that they don't go into fight or flight mode more often than they do. Seriously, with the U.S. has 800,000 police officers, and they handle everything from speeding tickets to drug dealers to cop killers to serial killers. I'd expect them to reach the breaking point a lot more often than they do. And seriously, kudos to you cops. Well, to most of you anyway. Most of you. So what's the answer? Can we get everybody to be part of the same tribe? Short answer is no. I mean, there's always going to be diversity, and people will always identify more with some people than they do with others. But maybe we can get to the point where these divisions are ideological or based on character, character of someone's heart, rather than on color of skin. Unfortunately, there's not a silver bullet. We're kind of stuck trying to solve an incredibly modern problem with the prehistoric brain and with prehistoric brain wiring. But as I said above, we're making progress. Hopefully we'll get there eventually. That's my thoughts on it, and that's all I've got. Thank you for watching.